it's always really interesting hearing from the front office at the end of the trade deadline, once that has concluded, to hear what their thoughts were, what they were trying to accomplish at the trade deadline, and if they feel like they accomplished what they set out to accomplish in the trade season. So Raptors fans felt very divided from what the Raptors did and did not do. So let's take a look exactly what General Manager Bobby Webster had to say and see if we are on the right path with him. Fans honestly, like myself, who are pretty comfortable with what the Raptors did. They bolstered their front court a little bit with some depth. They got under the tax, but some fans felt like the Eastern Conference was a little bit for the taking and really wanted to go out and make a big trade and really make a play to run at the Eastern Conference. If not, at least trade for some serious help, which would have cost some first-round picks. Me, I feel pretty comfortable with having kept them, but let's see how Bobby Webster kind of felt with how things went for the Raptors here. In this little clip, we have a couple clips to watch, starting with this one here.
Bobby, what was the trade deadline like from your point of view? Were you kind of hopeful something bigger might happen, or kind of just happy you got sort of the I's dotted and T's crossed?
Yeah, no, I think we, accomplished the objectives, right? We needed to get under the tax. We weren't looking for some front court help. So I think, we try to get our work done early, Monday, Tuesday.
It is quite typical of the Raptors too. They have made some deadline day moves in the past, but usually in the couple hours leading up to the deadline, they're not actively making moves. He's right. Typically it is in the days leading up that they do want to get all their shit done and out of the way.
Obviously, last night, I think the Trace thing, but we've been working on it for a while. We had some fun. There were some, bigger deals, but I think at this point, for this group, we didn't want to chase. You don't want to get in a situation where you felt like you were not necessarily overpaying, but, we're still on the upward climb, I think. What are we, 2/3 into the season? Pretty positive, start here, more than a start. The group's coming together. There will be a time where we're going to push in and, consolidate and add some picks, but we just felt, the prices at this point were a bit high for us.
So essentially, they were, feeling out what other teams were offering up just to see if they could get a good deal somewhere else. But ultimately decided that nothing was really worth it there. And big shout out to Omer Osman at Omer Osman 200 on Twitter, great aggregator of Raptors information, who pulled this clip and actually brought up some of the clips here. So essentially, the Raptors, the bare minimum for them to accomplish was to get under the tax, the luxury tax threshold, and also it was to get some help for the front court position. They did that. They brought in Trace Jackson-Davis, who fits into the depth, and they got under the tax. They were looking around at some big deals, but felt like it would have been really expensive to make a trade like that. Felt like it would have been really expensive to go and get Anthony Davis, to go and get a Domantas Sabonis. Neither of those trades felt like real solidified fits for this team. It was more so we're trying something here. So the Raptors don't feel pressured here. They don't feel rushed here. They feel like they're in a comfortable spot where they're a bit ahead of schedule. This was projected to be about a 500 season. They're comfortably above 500, about 2/3 of the way through the season. So they don't feel like they need to rush things here to make this team good immediately. They're growing. They're getting better. Scotty Barnes has taken a big leap this season, so there's a lot to bank on with him. So there wasn't really any necessity to rush this situation, which I think was the healthy way to approach it here. Everyone's clamoring, not everyone, but a lot of people are clamoring about need to make a move to stay competitive within this Eastern Conference. But it's a possibility that you can go and make a move, like the Sabonis move. Yeah, there's some positives there, like in getting off of the Jakob Poeltl contract, but you're also losing RJ Barrett at the same time. And it's possible you're making that move, you're losing first-round picks, and you're still not quite at that level to compete with some of the other teams in the Eastern Conference. So holding on to assets felt like a pretty important thing for this Raptors team. And again, just not a sense of having to rush on this situation. But let's watch this other clip here, because RJ Barrett was floated around in a lot of potential trade business. Here's what Bobby Webster had to say about that.
Trade rumor mill. obviously he's still young and he kind of fits the timeline of the team. But do you guys see RJ as a long-term fit with this current group?
Yeah, I think that's what you started out was a rumor mill, and I think it's great for the league, it's great for exposure, it's great for all of us to be part of it. But I think what's the best way? I think everyone talks amongst themselves, and I think that creates a lot of it. But I stay in communication with him, his agent, even in the case of Yak, and so I think they all know that unless they hear from us or hears from us personally, that they don't need to worry about all the rumors. As far as RJ, I think he's had a little bit of injury bad luck this year. When he's been on the court, we win. I think when he's been on the court, he provides dynamic scoring for them. But listen, we're going to have to win at the highest level. We're going to have to win down here and make it to the playoffs. We're going to have to win in the playoffs. And I think that's what we wanted to do with this group, is see what this group can do the last third of the season, hopefully make some noise in the postseason, and then we can sort of collect ourselves at the end of the year.
So I think and it was kind of the same in the Masai Ujiri era, where there were times at which he would let the roster have at it with the season. They don't feel like a move is necessarily going to really progress them to that next level, so that they feel like, okay, let's go see what we can accomplish with this group here. As for the players within the team, and I think, for trades in general with this Raptors front office, the Raptors have done a fantastic job of being tight-lipped about things, because the Trayce Jackson-Davis thing, to my wealth of knowledge in the Raptors media space, there was nothing at all. There was no noise regarding Trayce Jackson-Davis. That really came out of nowhere. But to them, that was something they had been working on for a while. As far as trades with the Kings and potentially with the Mavs for Sabonis or Anthony Davis, again, perhaps it was coming from the other side, but it seems like Bobby Webster has been pretty fair with RJ Barrett and Jakob Poeltl in the offseason. Even leading into the season, they informed RJ Barrett that he's going to be in trade talk. So it feels like there's a lot of communication there, where I think a lot of fans sometimes think these sorts of trades are almost like stabbing the player in the back and going behind their back. But it seems like the front office has been being pretty fair with the situation. Like, RJ's aware he's on the trade block. RJ's aware that they're shopping him. They're not trying to hide that from him. But again, nothing really materialized there. So again, we don't really know what the severity or how far some of these trade discussions really got, but it felt like, for the most part, the Raptors didn't feel like they were drowning and needed to come up for air and really needed to push for something big here. They're not in a hurry. They're not in a rush. They're comfortable where the situation is at. But still, they're always going to look around. They're always going to see if they can get a good deal somewhere. And I think we often feel like a year ago when the Raptors traded for Brandon Ingram, and even myself, it was kind of a vote of confidence in this group that we want to win. We want to be a good team right now. It felt, but kind of looking back, maybe it was more so that was just such a good trade. I mean, the Raptors didn't give up much. They gave up expiring salary and a future first-round pick that wasn't supposed to be very good, but probably is going to end up being very good. They gave up a future first-round pick that probably wasn't going to be very good to get Ingram. That trade is definitely working out for the Raptors right now. Ingram has been fantastic for the team. So they don't feel compelled to really go all in at the moment. But if a good trade is out there, then they're willing to do it. But maybe we'll never know, because one of the last things that I wanted to bring up here was that, and I mentioned how tight-lipped the Raptors organization is. Bobby Webster said that the one big thing we went after wasn't even reported. So they feel like the one big thing they were going after wasn't Sabonis, it wasn't Anthony Davis, it was something else. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm trying to piece together myself perhaps who this mystery player is. I've seen some theories out there. My best guess, I think, would be, and there were maybe some small things, I didn't see it truly reported, but I think Trey Murphy, it would be my guess for the player that the Raptors were really pushing towards. Could have been Jaren Jackson Jr. I've seen some news as well that it could have been actually Walker Kessler, surprisingly. So quite a few players they could have been looking at there, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. But all in all, again, just feel like the Raptors did the minimum. They accomplished their goals, as Bobby Webster said. The real work, again, though, needs to come in the offseason, because clearly there's holes with the team. If you want to progress this team to the next level, time to plug those holes. Let's go and do that.